My wife and I basically got married after living together for a year. She's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm from this small town in Austria. So, how did we end up together? Well, let me just say it's a long, long story. The year is 2008. A financial crisis just shook the market, and Obama was about to be elected president for the first time. And my school class was planning this trip to the US, specifically to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2008. And the question is, why Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Especially in Austria, nobody usually has heard of that place. But yeah, my teacher had some ties with family to that place, and we had like an exchange teacher teaching in our school at that time. So we had opportunities to sleep there for free or to stay there for free. And so it was an easy decision to go there. So for most of us, this was our first longer plane ride, and we landed in Chicago on the 14th of May in 2008. So we stayed at this very fancy, I would say, neighborhood, and a friend and I shared this super nice host family. We got crazy big bedrooms, like we were like super spoiled there. A massive furnished like basement with like massive TV and then, you know, everything you could just imagine as a teenager. And we even got like old MacBooks to use to email back, you know. I remember again, 2008, the first iPhone was about to come out, so nobody really had a smartphone. There was not really a smartphone around at that time, and so we had no real possibility of contacting our family but via email. We had a lot of programs planned, and it's funny enough, I found the initiatory, like the program of the trip in my old emails. And I was very nostalgic to just go through and read all the, you know, points we hit, all the things we did during that 10 days stay. So on the first couple of days, we got acclimated because, you know, time zone, time change, and jet lag. For a lot of us, it was the first time experiencing a real jet lag. So we did some sightseeing. We went around town. We went to Madison. That's the capital of Wisconsin. Museums and lots of fun stuff. On the following Monday, we were supposed to go to Tosa East High School, and some of us kind of got lost because we took the wrong bus and we went to Tosa West, I think, if that's the place. I don't remember. So 45 minutes later, and we were late already at that point, we got to the right school, Tosa East, and I remember they told us if we are not there at a certain time, they lock up the school so nobody can leave or enter the building at that point. So we got there, and thankfully we were still able to go in. And I remember walking down this corridor or this hall, and there were standing like 4 students and my teacher. They were all waiting for us, and my teacher scolded us a little bit, like, "Hey, where you were late, blah blah." But thankfully you're here now. And then we got assigned a student. And I remember seeing Danielle for the first time, and there's even a picture of that moment. And I was like secretly hoping that I would follow her around because I instantly had a crush on her. And funny enough, she picked me. And funny enough, the reason why she did was, first of all, because she thought my name sounded cool, which I've heard more times now in the US than I can count. And we also share a birthday.
I have the memory of a goldfish, so not really. No, I remember getting the sheet of paper and seeing all the names of the students. I remember picking your name because I thought your name was cool, and our birthdays were the same. I don't actually remember the moment that we met because I had actually thought that you weren't late, and then you told me that you came late, so I didn't remember that at all. But I do remember you guys following us around school and coming to our classes with us and trying to get us to say words like Katzenschwarf, and which I probably still said wrong. And we were trying to get you to say words like squirrel and rural. It was a lot of silliness. I remember that.
So on the second day of school, I was sick in bed, sadly. So I missed the second day of school. I missed the second day of shadowing her. But on the last day at her school, I was back again. And I remember they prepared this German, Austrian food thing. And we had like in her German class this happening. I don't remember. But that was basically already one of the last days in Milwaukee. And I was very sad to leave. But during that stay, during that week alone, we made a lot of new friends, and thankfully Facebook was around at that point, and so almost all of my classmates got a Facebook immediately and befriended all of those people, and that's how we stayed connected essentially. But on the following Friday, we went back to Chicago, and I remember, it's so crazy, I remember the moment so vividly, getting on the bus. I got this iPod in the US. I mean, I brought my iPod to the US and back, and I was listening to a certain song, a certain album, and driving onto the on-ramp of the highway towards Chicago. It's so crazy, I remember that moment so vividly. It's so connected to this one song, and it was bittersweet. I remember trying to not tear up, in front of my colleagues, in front of my classmates, because that's embarrassing at that age. But yeah, I knew that I've created some very special memories with some very special people during that time. So years and years went by, and we, kept contact over Facebook. We saw each other's milestones, heartaches, accidents, and just life happening from this far distance of many, many miles or kilometers. But somehow in 2016, I was about to finish my bachelor's degree, and I knew my life would restart soon. My current relationship was at its end, and I was contemplating getting my master's degree or starting my career, and I was at this crossroads kinda. And Danielle and I started because she had similar feelings or problems in terms of her life, that she felt stuck, or she felt like things are about to change. But yeah, there was no decision made yet, obviously. And I decided to book a solo trip for my bachelor's degree to the West Coast, where she was living at that point, Portland, Oregon. Leading up to that trip, we started talking more. We started, exchanging thoughts and just like texts, and we started even writing letters, handwritten letters to each other, to make this, whole connection a little deeper, and just, I don't know, explore what could be, I would say, or start exploring what could be. And yeah, I remember getting drinks the night before in Vienna, before my flight, and I was with friends, and it was a great night, and I was still tipsy when I got up at 4 a.m. to take a cab to the airport. After a few hours later, I finally landed in Portland, and I remember the small little airport after the baggage claim. The store opened, and Danielle was waiting in this hallway. And it felt right from the first moment on. It's hard to describe, to, I don't know, see someone you haven't seen in so long. You have not really seen that long. You have met, obviously. You've got to know them over distance. But yeah, it was a weird feeling, and I think we both felt it immediately. And we had a blast, we spent the week together in Portland, just having fun. Just driving around. She showed me a lot around Portland area and outside of Portland. And then I went on to San Francisco for another week, which was one of the best holidays in my life. Just this, you're free, you have no real responsibilities in terms of who to look out for, or just make sacrifices. No, you just do whatever you want to do. And then I met friends in San Francisco, and it was just a very, very, very cool trip. After a seemingly very long and still fun summer, Danielle came to visit Austria in fall of 2016. And in 4 weeks, we traveled to Prague, Innsbruck. We did a lot of stuff in Austria. I showed her around while also starting my master's degree at university. And we already knew that we both wanted to figure out this thing, whatever this thing was at that point. And long distance with the time difference of several hours was not an option in the long run, obviously, but we had to obviously go back to that. And once Danielle left, I fell into deep depression, and I don't know, everything seemed uncertain. Everything seemed so like pointless, you know. You have this crazy time for 4 weeks again, kinda, and then it's all gone. It all stopped.
That was maybe the saddest I've ever been, at least up until that point. And I remember we used to write letters to each other, like handwritten letters, and you wrote me one right before I left, and you said I couldn't open it until I was either on the plane or got home, and either way, I opened it when I was on the plane, and I think I read it the entire plane ride, and I just cried, and yeah, I was really, really sad. And I had this little heart that your mom gave me, that I still have, this little stone heart, and I was holding on to it the entire plane ride. And I don't know, I felt like this was nothing I had ever experienced before, nor would it be something I would ever experience again. And just that feeling of that time going home, not knowing when we would see each other again, was devastating. But I definitely knew that I wasn't, it wasn't done, and we still had a future ahead of us. I was very hopeful.
And winter was coming, my depression was in full swing, and on top of that, I had a herniated disc. That kind of started my health anxiety journey. And the hardest part was just the little time we had during the day because of time difference. I got up and I had to wait like 6 to 7 hours until she got up, and then, we had a 6 to 7 hours window where we were able to talk, and then I went back to sleep usually. And obviously the amount of options we were able to use for us is crazy nowadays, but it still felt like you were only so much part of the other person's life. And in December of 2016, Danielle told me that she had decided to book a ticket for January and that she would try to move to Austria, at least for a certain amount of time. All her, her lease ran out, and then all the things that kind of kept her in the US were not there anymore. And so she decided to do it very naively, so I would say, because the process of getting a visa was very hard. It's not easy, and especially not easy in Austria. We kept on pushing, and we found an option for her to stay as an au pair for a year. And so we had 12 months time frame to just live together and explore this relationship. Moving in together as a new couple is probably not the best thing, since you're currently tested on your strength of the relationship. And since you just started the relationship, you have not had no time to, build a strong foundation, or at least some sort of foundation. We literally filled hours of our third podcast, on talking about that topic, and how we overcome it, and how we manage to communicate better together, and also how we overcome one of the biggest things that we didn't even think about in the first place at all, language barrier. But in the end, we made it, and we knew that what we had was something special. I know it sounds so cheesy, and it sounds so like, oh yeah, everybody. No, but really did feel it. We really did feel that this is something worth, something that is not happening a lot in life. And we put a lot of time, sweat, and tears into this thing and figured it out and fought for it. Aware that this is a longer video and I could fill even more time with the, visa process, all the stuff that we went through, the issues. The first year living together, oh mate, let me tell you, the first year was rough. But in the end, the important thing was trust and communication. And I think Danielle was one of the first partners that really pushed me in ways that I needed to be pushed, that I needed to be shown in mirror and say, hey, this behavior is not okay, or this, what you're doing is not constructive towards our relationship, stuff like that. And I didn't know that I needed that, but after those years and after changing my behaviors a lot, I'm so fucking grateful for that. I'm very, very, very grateful for that.
Getting through that first year was probably the most difficult time we've ever had together. Specifically, I guess, because of the language barrier and just learning to live with somebody that you don't actually know that well. So we kind of put a lot of things into that first year and did them very quickly. But the takeaway was that we both put in the effort. We both really worked on our communication skills. And had we not both been 100% in and 100% willing to work on things with each other, but also take the time to work on our own things that needed to be worked on, had we not done that, or had just one of us not done that, we wouldn't have survived it probably. And so our biggest takeaway had always been, communication is key. And I think we've brought everything that we've learned from that first year into the rest of our relationship. And it's gotten us to where we are now, which is this beautiful, open, vulnerable style of communication that we maybe otherwise wouldn't have experienced. And I'm super grateful for that year. As hard as it was, I'm very grateful for that year because we learned a lot and we taught each other a lot. And yeah, now we have our little family and it's perfect.
Being married now for 7 years, having a kid, it's amazing to see how far we've come. Like with our backstory, with meeting and now being here. Putting literal work into a relationship pays off if both partners contribute in a constructive and positive way, obviously. And it's literal work. Let me just tell you that it's a lot of time and effort to build something that is sturdy, that can withstand problems. And we built a very sturdy foundation early on, and I feel like it's a very strong foundation that it's hard to rattle on. I love you, Danielle. I love our story. I love to tell our story because I feel like it's very special. It's very unique. And I love our family. Thank you for giving me this beautiful life.